Well, ladies and gentlemen, as you can tell, this is not my green screen. This is a wall to our new house. I still got to put my green screen up and do all that, but I'm just feeling like I've got to get some videos going. I got such a massive backlog. I'm probably gonna have to skip a bunch of them and just stay with what's most current. So this particular video, two volcanic eruptions in two different areas of the world at pretty much the same time. And every time I see something weird like this, or just even a single volcano going off, I think to myself, what happened to 2012? Right? What happened to the Mayan calendar, the end of, December 21st, 2012? And I kept telling you, until I see a climax and a peak, and then it goes down with activity, whether it's volcanic activity or earthquake activity or both, I have no reason to believe that these things are going to just settle down and everything's going to be fine. As a side note, I might as well mention this since it was dated the 7th of January, and here I am at the 19th. And they're showing, from Zero Hedge, is showing that silver surges to key technical level. While gold has been grabbing the safe haven headlines in recent days, this morning it is silver's turn. Having rallied 2.5%, silver just broke its 50-day moving average for the first time in 2 months. Silver touches the key technical level. So he's just making a quick note of that. I'm just going to repeat it. I'm certainly not going to do a full video on it because it's very minor, just a little blurb kind of a thing. So back to this volcanic activity that is kind of weird. We've got two volcanoes going off, two different parts of the world at the same time. Monster eruptions. Panic as two volcanoes explode simultaneously, causing mass evacuation. Now, in case you're wondering, this is dated today, the 19th. Major evacuations have been sparked by the simultaneous eruption of two volcanoes, including one of the world's most feared, spewing toxic gas and ash clouds for miles. The two volcanoes are thousands of miles apart, but are on the edge of the same tectonic plate, the Philippine Plate, sparking fears of a major seismic shift, more volcanic activity, and even earthquakes and tsunamis. More than 1,200 people have been evacuated from within a 1.9-mile containment zone around Mount Igan in Kupang, eastern Indonesia, one of the most volcanic parts of the globe. Keeping in mind, Indonesia. Remember when the Webbot, well, I don't know if you'll remember or not, but I'm going to tell you in case you don't know, Webbot predicted in advance a massive earthquake causing tsunamis and damage, killing what it said was 300,000 people, deaths. The official number is not 300,000, by the way, but it's 200 and something thousand. Yet, all of the mainstream media at the time, all the stories that were running was 300,000, believed it at 300,000, etc. So, Webbot did pick that up in advance. So, I just want to throw that out there, because this right here isn't necessarily a Webbot hit all of a sudden. But I want to remind you, it did talk about the one that nailed Indonesia several years back. So back to this article. It was followed moments later by the eruption of Zupanovsky on Russia's eastern coast, which spewed lava 5 miles into the air. It spewed lava 5 miles into the air. Now that there ain't no little burp, if you know what I mean. The latter explosion is likely to affect air traffic in Russia, but the huge ash cloud is also drifting east over the Pacific Ocean, so the impact on flights could be much worse. In Asia, officials distributed thousands of gas masks to villagers around the volcano on eastern Flores Island amid fears of a major eruption as the choking fumes worsened. All residents living within the containment zone have been ordered to evacuate, while roads bringing traffic in have been closed. Mount Igan is considered a very active volcano and is in the top 10 of the potentially deadliest in the event of a major eruption. More people living further from the volcano may have to also flee if the situation gets worse, disaster officials have warned. In Russia, the Institute of Volcanology and Seismology in the Kamchatka area earlier issued a code orange. How about a code red for like red hot lava? Warning that the eruption was underway and warning aircraft to avoid flying near the exploding peak. Fortunately, the volcano is 42 miles from populated areas, and the emergency services said ash had yet to reach any homes. A spokesman for the institute said today at around 4:30 p.m. or 3:30 a.m. GMT, the Zopanovsky volcano spewed ash to the height of up to 5 miles above sea level. Last autumn, Express.co.uk reported how tests were being carried out on the impact of volcanic ash getting into a jet engine because the true effects are still not known, despite the global chaos caused by the Icelandic ash clouds in 2010. Now it said the disaster mitigation official said, "We are on a high alert and ready to evacuate any time. There have been fears of a big eruption after the volcanic activity began a month ago. Activity increased over the weekend before locals began to leave the area. The last eruption, which was in 2008, saw a 3.6 mile high plume of toxic ash and material blasted into the air. There are 129 active volcanoes in Indonesia on the Ring of Fire, a belt of seismic activity running around the basin of the Pacific Ocean." Now I'm going to ask you, if it was just 2008, the last time this thing erupted, and you add 8 more years, now we're in 2016, and it erupts again with some serious power, and I don't necessarily know the answer to this, but I got a sneaky suspicion anyways, that I'm going to say it anyways. Is it possible, or should I say, is it normal that a volcano goes off and then 8 years later, just 8 years later, it goes off again? Because everything I've ever read about, and whether it's a major earthquake from the past or major volcanic eruption from the past, it took quite a number of years, decades, and even centuries before it blew off again. So I'm just curious why in a matter of 8 years this thing's going off again. But once again, back to what I was talking about. This stuff has not peaked. It has not peaked. It is still getting worse. Volcanic activity more frequently and more violent. Earthquake activity more frequently and more violent. Makes me think of that guy, Dr. La Violette, with his Superwave theory. I've mentioned him a few times before. Any of you interested in that kind of thing, or this? And his Superwave theory is about this wave of energy that comes from the center of the galaxy, our Milky Way galaxy, and as we go around the outside of that galaxy in a sine wave pattern, our little solar system does, up and down, like a nice little sine wave. There's key points when it lines up with the center, right? So if you have a wave going up and down, when it goes down, there's a center point, and then when it goes back up, there's that same center point across, all the way across. And his theory is that this, what he calls a super wave, comes and we align with it. So it's almost like, think of like a laser beam or like a real fine signal of some type, if you will, that's in a straight line. And then you come down, and as you get closer and closer and closer to that, think of like if it was radio waves. As you got closer to that frequency, it's going to start causing interference. And then when you're dead on with it, it's just going to cause maybe your radio to completely quit working. In that example, he suggests that it's going to cause the planetary systems, or our star, or so the sun, all the planets in the solar system, to become a bit more violent, if you will, a bit more active. Active sun equals active planets. So if the sun's aggravated by this thing, our planets automatically are too. it makes me think about the whole global warming nonsense, and that all these other planets have all heated up drastically, as a matter of fact, during the same time period we on Earth consider, the time frame of global warming. We're not even on any of these other planets. So how the hell are they heating up at the same time ours is? It's utter nonsense. But if you want to see this guy's interview, it's really neat. It's about an hour and a half or 2 hours long, if I recall. And just search for Superwave Theory, Project Camelot on YouTube, and you'll find it. It was done several years ago, even before 2012. And I'll just end this video by telling you that she's asking him, because it's not 2012 yet at the time, and she says, because he said he studied these ice core samples and was able to determine that on these patterns, these cyclic patterns, thousands of years, but right on the money, all three of these time frames, there's some kind of issue on Earth where, I'm going to say, things get a little violent, a little crazy, and some particles from space, a particular type that he says only comes from space, is seen more and more in these ice core samples. Like there's rings of black spots, and that's what he's talking about. And so she says, well, by chance, is the next one due in 2012? And he says, well, because of our technology, there's a matter of, there's an margin of error, and I can tell you that margin of error is plus or minus 400 years. But you're talking about thousands and thousands of years of a cycle. So 400 years is tiny. But after he said that, he said, but the answer is yes, any day now, up until 400 years, right? Because it's due for one. So that's interesting. And then we see this stuff happening on our planet. Also interesting. And things like this is what makes me feel a lot better about buying freeze-dried food and dehydrated food and storing it. Because it only takes one major catastrophic event to make you wish that you had that stuff. So I got to do another video. Take care.